So, but she had also filed charges against you. Is that correct?
Well, she did, but then she went to the detective and said she wanted them dismissed.
Was that because you had tried to talk her out of it?
No, she actually, I was told not to talk to her, so I didn't. And she called me. And the detectives, I guess they called her because she, like I said, she drank a lot. And she made a couple of statements that wasn't true. And for a long time, I told her, I said, I'm not coming back over. It's pretty much over. And I thought about it, and I said, well, it would be kind of nice to look good, and, and go back, make sure everything is straightened out. So I did, And during the process, she was saying that, everything's going to be a lot better this time if you'll just, give me another chance. But the detectives, I'm sure they called her in a lie, during the first time she was going to file the charges, because she was drinking one night, and it was late one night, but she'd had a lot to drink, And so she ended up hitting me with a dog leash or something. It wasn't much to it, but anyway, the next day I left. As soon as I left, she texted me and said she missed me. And, and then later on she called me and said she wanted me to come back. I never went back. And then later on there was charges or something, the detective called me, and I went down and talked to him, and then he found out that there was some indiscrepancies in the case,
This is what bothers me.
All right, Mark, what do you got?
Okay, so we've got this low level, again, this underlying disgust and contempt throughout. What's the disgust? Well, you'll see the nostrils flare. You'll see, the top lip tighten. The contempt. See the side of the mouth go up. Now, where have I seen this before? I think we saw it a lot at a continuous level with somebody like Amber Heard, for example. We've seen it with others that we've looked at. There is a personality type that does fit that as well, and this kind of low-level malaise all the time. Take a look at that. Have a think about that for yourselves. One last thing about this. Hitting me with a dog leash or something. Hitting me with a dog leash or something. Well, as a general rule, and it may be just me, if somebody hits me with something, I can usually remember exactly what it was. Usually remember, roughly speaking, the kind of thing that it was. He does say maybe it was a rope later on. But why the nondescript nature of this? Do you really not know what it was? There would be something I'd like to dig into a little bit more as to exactly what this was and why this was occurring, because it seems to be already there's this general discontent with the world and getting yourself into situations where he's, in this case, the receiver of violence, but does not quite remember the tools being used around that. Well, that's either because he does remember, or it happens so often that he actually doesn't remember. I don't know which one it is, but something that I'd like to get into there. So this interviewer, again, fantastic job. Scott, what do you got on this one?
All right. Overall, something's not right here. This is, when you look at this, if you knew nothing else about this case or this guy or anything else, if you watch this with the sound down, you go, something's not right here. This whole thing, the information he's giving out is just stuff he can fall back on. He's putting out so many things. He's putting out all this information. Well, this happened. Oh yeah, remember I said that? And they can fall back on that. He's creating time everywhere. This is it. It's beautiful what he's doing. I see what he's doing. It's not beautiful, but there's a lot going on there. It's really intricate. Some of the things he's doing. He doesn't realize he's doing that. I don't think. We see that faking brow engagement again. And when he says, because she was drinking one night, et cetera, that chin to the single shoulder shrug thing, that makes me think that I think she was drinking all the time. And we're going to see how this late night thing and drinking comes together in a little while. But when he does that most of the time, and I didn't realize it. I've said it before. Joe Navarro pointed it out that quite often when people raise that single shoulder shrug and the chin goes toward that, most of the time, or quite often, they're being deceptive. I think that's what we're seeing here. He's either not sure about this or he's making that part up to make sure that we know she's drunk every night. This whole thing is she's bad and I'm good. It's how everything is about how good he is and about how horrible she is. Birds of a feather. I'm all the time saying that. They flock together. So if he's hanging out with her, he can't be the best guy in the world. He's going to start talking about his friend in a few minutes. You're going to find out what kind of guy that guy is. You're going to see he's not the best guy in the world. He's got the worst friends, like you were saying earlier, Greg. I mean, it's not just hanging out with the bad crowd. You are the bad crowd. You're part of the bad crowd. And then we see a blend of two expressions. It's that disgust and anger. And it was on the part where he says it was late one night and on a lot to drink. That's where we're seeing the contempt. That's stuff I believe you were talking about, Mark. And those things are flying around everywhere. But that's the first time we see a really good blend of those two. And then maybe her behavior when she was drunk at 2 and 3 in the morning really made him angry. And that's why we're seeing that when he talks about that. We're seeing the anger and we're seeing the contempt and the disgust on there. But I really think that contempt and that disgust is a combination of anger in there as well. Which makes me think he pops off pretty hard when he gets mad. He's liable to start swinging and just be a mean guy. I'll leave it there. Chase, what do you got?
I'm about to agree with you a whole lot. We're seeing a lot more disparaging the victim here. It's what we said in the last video. And during his discussion of the charges that she filed, he only mentions some of the details being inaccurate or false. This is another red flag we tend to see in guilty people when they have a hard time calling somebody a liar outright.
Were those the indiscrepancies he was talking about?
You stole my line.
That's the whole problem is indiscrepancies.
I'm sorry.
There's a lot of indiscrepancies in here. But and he says she ended up hitting me with a dog leash or something. Mark, I think part of what might be here is him decreasing the significance of the event. Like it was so minuscule that I couldn't remember it. There's double emotional accessing right here. It's the first time we see it, which is when our eyes go down and to the right. This is typically when we have emotional recall for events. This is a big deal because we haven't really seen it up to this point. And I would say, and you're about to see even more evidence for this, that this might suggest his need for control and power. And this is potentially further supported by his choice of crime, just beating her to death and then setting the apartment on fire. This shows a level of kind of brutality and physical violence that we very often see in criminals with a strong desire for power and control. And the arson could be a way to destroy the evidence, but it could also be a symbolic act of cleansing or erasing his actions for himself. And we might see what the answer is to that in the coming video. And he says, the next day I left. This means that she hit him with a dog leash. Then he decided to spend the night. But he's trying to say that he tried to get away from the problem, which, he's an idiot. So let's talk about some genes really quick. Let's talk about a gene called DRD2 and DRD4. These are dopamine receptor genes involved in the dopamine reward pathway. And these have also been associated with antisocial behavior and aggression in many studies. And variations in these genes might affect impulsivity and reward-seeking behavior, which maybe we're seeing here. We're definitely seeing him accuse somebody else of it. Both of the people that he's talking about, making accusations of, are about this thing, and we tend to do that. We tend to project a lot of the stuff that we're ashamed of onto other people. Maybe we're seeing that. Greg?
Yeah, a couple of things for me. There's a lot. First of all, let's talk about bad guys. Bad guys live among us, lots of them, and you don't recognize them because you never see the bad guy face, if that makes sense to you. And so when a person puts on their best face, and we're seeing it, you saw him with a guy, now you see him with a woman. He had a bad guy face for a couple of minutes, some anger in that tightened upper lip. We don't see that yet. Just hang in there because she's going to do a good job of agitating him too. And we'll get to see some of that with him. But the bad guy face doesn't always come out until it's too late for people. And I also want to say, when we say he's hanging out with the wrong crowd, we're not disparaging this woman who was murdered by him, because people get in bad relationships all the time that are good people. It does occur. What I'm saying is if you're accusing all your friends of being druggies and that kind of thing, you're probably not hanging out with them if you're a Puritan. So just so you know. The other thing that is interesting, however, is there's disgust when he talks about alcohol almost every time. And there's full-blown contempt when he talks about her drinking a lot. That makes you wonder, Chase, you say it a lot, and we always say, we are made of what we come from. I say we're an onion or a pearl, and we just keep laying down things over it. If somewhere in your childhood there's a whole lot of disdain for somebody who drank a lot, that can create a lot of later life issues with people who drink a lot if you don't deal with it yourself. So we have to start paying attention to him and saying, wonder why. And there's also a couple of really weird things he does in here. Never. He's using strong words like never when he's talking about self. And then he uses words like or something when he's talking about charges for being violent. If you want to know how he looks when he's lying, let me show you and point it out right here to you, because he does it outright lies here. He says, I never talked to her about it. And later we learn not only did he talk to her about it, he recorded it on his phone. So he's lying right here. He is lying clearly. So if you want to see that overengagement, that romancer, that happy face, all of that, and he moves into, when he says she actually, he moves into a qualifier and then does a redirect. He says she actually, boom, boom, boom. Oh, hold on. I didn't actually talk to her about it. I was told not to talk to her. Just watch him, because you'll see he's trying to be smooth and polished and believable and friendly. He's going out of his way to be friendly to this person because he thinks she's believing what he's saying. He also does an uncharacteristic pause after she drank a lot and made some statements that were not true, and then does a hard eye lock, like, you believe me, don't you? There's a couple of others, but the one I want you to try, there's a strong request for approval early in this where you raise your brow to say, hey, you get me, right? Or approve of me, right? But he also tucks his chin and raises his brow. Try doing that and tell me that's a natural move. Something is going on in his head when he does that. So you try it and tell me what you think is going on in his head.
One of those tape replays.
So, but she had also filed charges against you. Is that correct?
Well, she did, but then she went to the detective and said she wanted them dismissed.
Was that because you had tried to talk her out of it?
No, she actually, I was told not to talk to her, so I didn't. And she called me. And the detectives, I guess they called her because she, like I said, she drank a lot. And she made a couple of statements that wasn't true. And for a long time, I told her, I said, I'm not coming back over. It's pretty much over. And I thought about it, and I said, well, it would be kind of nice to look good, and, and go back, make sure everything is straightened out. So I did, And during the process, she was saying that, everything's going to be a lot better this time if you'll just, give me another chance. But the detectives, I'm sure they called her in a lie, during the first time she was going to file the charges, because she was drinking one night, and it was late one night, but she'd had a lot to drink, And so she ended up hitting me with a dog leash or something. It wasn't much to it, but anyway, the next day I left. As soon as I left, she texted me and said she missed me. And, and then later on she called me and said she wanted me to come back. I never went back. And then later on there was charges or something, the detective called me, and I went down and talked to him, and then he found out that there was some indiscrepancies in the case,
If you like this video, get the full body language breakdown and analysis on our main channel by clicking this video right here.